Welcome back to another episode for the Survivor Stories. Today, I am with a gentleman named Corey who's going to talk about his experience with his ex Tifa. And I'm going to be probably acting less as just a podcast host and also more as a bit of a counselor in this role, just listening to what he's sharing. But without further ado, before I get too into this, Corey, would you like to just quickly introduce yourself before we get into your story?
Yeah. Thanks, Ken. Yeah, my name is Corey, and yes, I definitely can say that my attachment style leans anxious, which yeah, what people might think, yes, straight men being anxious, it does exist. We are out there, but problem is we're just invisible to most of you most of the time. But yeah, I definitely had a very interesting experience where somebody I do believe leans very heavily, dismissive avoidant. And yeah, I'm going to just like tell my story to Ken and pretty much go from there and see how it pans out, what he thinks about it.
Love it. Well, without further ado, I'm all ears. What happened?
All right. Well, I'll give you some of the backstory just for a little bit to build you up to her. I definitely came out of a 10-year relationship with a woman. We'll call her Aerith for keeping connectivity with all the naming situations. But yeah, she we were in a relationship for 10 years, and it definitely ran its course. And when I ended it, you definitely I came to a point where what now? What am I going to do with myself? Trying to find a sense of purpose in life. And you do what you would most people do in those situations. You would kind of find places of belonging. So you find like social groups or something like that to join, like where it'd be like a hiking group or anything of that matter, of like a group that pertains to your interests. And as you can tell behind me, I really like to play board games, so I joined a board game group within my town. And I will say that, like, I tried to, like, get back on the dating scene to some extent. I didn't really try that hard because I kept away from the uh the dating apps for the most part. I knew they were like a toxic cesspool, so I tried to stay away from them pretty much right off the bat and do it the old fashioned way and meet people out in public, and social meetups was probably like one of the best bet, because chances are if you go to a meetup, you might find somebody with, similar interests as somebody when you go to a meetup like that. And I will say that every person that I came across between Aerith and, Tifa are worthy of their own episodes, but I digress. Where Tifa will be the main focus, maybe that'll be a story for another time. And I met her back in the end of July of last year. And so she came to the board game meetup, and then I met her again. And then she came to another meetup, and then she came to another meetup. By the third time that I met her at one of these meetups, uh, we got to talking and we exchanged numbers. And when we did that, I kind of took the liberty of, like, take a shot. Texted her, asked her out to lunch, and yeah, we did. We meet up, we had lunch, and then I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, I don't know, like, she's really cute. Hopefully things could go well. But I say that, like, I don't know if she's going to take this as like possibly a date. Could this be a date? Or we're just meeting up as friends. But we sat at the restaurant for over 4 hours. So I would say safe to say that she might be into me. And then another justifiable clue, me reading the room, is after that, she texted me and she was like, just so you know, I had a really great time with you, but I'm just going to be totally transparent with you. There's this other guy that he's in an indie band, and I went to a show, and we're going to hang out again later this week. And I just wanted to let what the expectations are of this. And I'm like, okay, so she definitely has an idea that this might be more than just two people meeting up and having lunch together. It definitely gave me an impression like, okay, I think well, okay. So the next time we met, uh we were kind of like, it was very like silly, because both of us were sitting there, and like after the dinner date, we kind of like, so is this a date or are we just hanging out? Like, what is this? And she's like, I don't know. This is all, I don't know, And then, is it okay to hug? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And then he was like, is it okay to, kiss? Like, is this a date? And then, I mean, she was like, I don't know. Like, I haven't done this in a while. I was like, me neither, And it was very cute, like rom-com, kind of ridiculous, awkward, cute. And I kind of just said, fuck it. And I kissed her. And then the next time we met up, she pulled me to the side and she did the old, um, is it okay if we can just be friends right now? And I'm like, okay. And she definitely did the whole ramble of like, I just got out of a long-term relationship and like I don't know what I want right now. Like I'm not in a good place. Is it okay? It's like there's nothing wrong with you. It's like I do find you attractive, but is it okay if we can just be friends right now? And definitely looking back in hindsight, this was like red flag number one of like a dismissive avoidant shutting down a situation. I feel like, like she was definitely trying to shut it down before it even took off.
Yep.
But yeah. And for
I
some,
was going to say, Corey, is it okay if I just jump in there for a second?
go ahead, take your
I was
pick.
going to say, I know you have the power of hindsight, and I'm literally starting from the beginning. But I got to say, for a first date, there's a lot of, I'd say, on the surface, there's a lot of good things that are showing up. Like to both of your credit, it's, you know, a 4 hour date marked by clarity, like where are we at? What is this? Is this actually a date? Is it okay if I kiss you? Good consensual language. She's clear about the fact that she's seeing another guy and she's just been to this indie band of his. And, she's just, and I think what's interesting to me though is the fact that she brings up the information about the fact that she's just gotten out of a long-term relationship and she's not sure where it's at after you kissed her. And to me, I mean, that's when it came out. Is that right?
Yeah. Because she definitely brought that to my attention after, I made my move.
Right. And question, how did you guys first connect? Because it wasn't through a dating app, was it?
No, it was completely organic. Like, so she just moved into town because she just graduated from Penn State and she was going to start working at the university here in my city. And so she just moved into town and looking for friends. And, she's just a nerdy girl that likes playing board games and saw, hey, this town has a board game group. I'm going to go check it out. And like she just showed up and I was already in the group. And, I was like, hey, a cute girl. Started talking to her because like the first night I didn't say anything to her really because she was playing with somebody else. But then like somebody mentions like, hey, Corey does his own board game meetups. And then I was like, oh yeah. And then that's when I kind of nonchalantly got introduced to her and told her about my meetup. She came to my meetup and then we met again at another meetup. And by that point I was kind of like, hey, can we exchange like contact information so we can keep in touch? And I just kind of shot my shot from there, from like, hey, let me just ask her out and see where it goes, just
Yeah.
ask lunch. And I was like, I don't know, it could go nowhere. But the sign of we were there for over 4 hours was like a good, clear sign that I think she might actually like me. So,
Yeah. I mean, what I would say to that is, and the reason I cut in is because me just thinking ahead is I was thinking, okay, boy meets girl, it's very much a case of there's excuse me. You obviously have shown interest. There seems to be an interest in her, in Tifa. You're getting to know her. Over the course of like these game hangouts and also yours, and you just think, oh, what the heck? Why don't we just go hang out and get to know you
yeah,
a bit more personally and
what you
privately?
got to lose?
Yeah, and the answer is absolutely nothing. And so,
Hmm.
you're hanging out, and even though she said, I'm just looking to make friends, initially, I mean, on the surface, I really think so far, my assessment of this is I don't think there's anything loud and wrong on either of your parts except for one
No,
thing.
no, there's a
Like,
lot of green flags with this chick, I will
yeah, I
say.
would agree. Like I was going to say, from like early stages, all of this is looking like green flag material, but there is one thing that makes me a little bit hesitant, and it's not a yellow flag, it's not a red flag per se, it's more of a contextual flag, which is, you know, I understand that, if you're a young girl and no matter what you experience you've had in dating and relationships, hell, you can be a woman. It doesn't really matter. If you've had a relationship that you've just exited and you're feeling a bit wobbly, I understand you may not want to bring that up and talk about it. And typically what I found in my experience is better to bring that up sooner rather than later if you feel like you're going to have an intimate moment with someone. If you've moved to a new
Yeah.
town, better to probably be upfront and say, listen, it's just friends, that's it. Especially if you're going to have like a one-on-one encounter with someone who you're sexually compatible with. So
Hmm.
to me, I mean, having moved to different towns myself as well too, without a support network, I've gone on dates and I made it pretty upfront, pretty clear, but not everyone does that. I understand, best dating practices don't always happen, and that's fine. But in saying that, I would have loved it if she had led with, I know we're just getting to connect, Corey, and you seem like someone I'm interested in, getting to know. But I also need to let you know, just again, I'd like us to just be friends because this is where I'm at. I would have loved it if she'd led more with that. I understand that she didn't, and I'm just saying this is just a soft correction for her if, she would learn any of this stuff. I don't think you've done anything wrong in what you've done and how you, set things up and
No.
where things have gone. Like so far, I'm reading this thinking, this is actually, building reasonably well. The thing that I'm a little bit cautious of is the fact that after the kiss, that's when she revealed the whole, and I've been in a long-term relationship that I've just got out of, and I'm looking for friends. To me,
Yeah.
it kind of contradicts the whole, I went to see this other guy with his band. And that's why to me, I'm like, okay, to me, it just feels like the waters are a little bit muddied in terms of like where you stand, where anyone really stands with her at this particular point in time. And to me,
Yeah, because
just
that
almost,
information just seemed irrelevant to me. Like, what does it care? Yeah, like why are you telling me you're hanging out with this other guy that's in the indie band? Like, was that information pertain to me, hanging out with you?
well, especially considering that to me, I just sort of think, okay, if, for instance, you have just ended this hangout, if you want to call it that, and it's been a 4 hour
Hmm.
hangout, and things have gotten, things have felt like it's leading to something where there could be mutual interest. And you've articulated that, you thought, hey, maybe this is a date. I don't know. Like, where do you stand with this? And then she's telling you, well, I also need to let you know about this other person that's, there. I feel like to me, with the information that's presented thus far, it's like she's happy to go and connect with you for 4 hours. And she is also seeing someone else, it would seem, in more than just a friendly capacity. It's sort of the one thing that I would critique her with is say, I think she needs stronger boundaries in terms of saying, this is where I'm at, this is who I'm seeing, you are squarely this is what's going to happen. I would have preferred more of
Yeah.
that language up front than letting a 4 hour conversation proceed because to me, it's sort of like, well, hang on, like because a 4 hour conversation and a hangout, like that's not a hangout. That's like we're getting somewhere a bit more intimate with that, in my opinion.
Oh
So.
yeah.
That's why I want to be very clear. And I'm looking at this from the perspective too of like, I've had those kind of encounters before, and I would have much preferred to have known ahead of time some joint structure around what's going on rather than, getting my hopes up. And that's a thing for me as well too, in terms of going in with my own expectations. So long story short, I'm on the same page as you. At the moment, I'm just sort of thinking, could have been some slight tweaks, but otherwise nothing to really worry
Yeah.
about time.
Yeah, and she definitely pointed out she all throughout the whole relationship she needed to work on her boundaries. And but
Okay.
anyway, like I don't know, somehow I just told her straightforward. I was like, listen, after she said that to me, of course there's like this wave of anxiety went through my body and like, oh no, but I just told her straight. I was like, listen, I think you're attractive. You think I'm attractive. Like we have a lot of compatibility here. Like we love spending time with each other. And I'm like, what do we got to lose? Like, why do we have to let fear overtake us to the point where we could hold back something potentially, worth it? And
Yeah.
we'll miss out on those kind of things because we let fear get the best of us. And she was like, okay, and boom, it was like, clear sailing from there. And it went really well.
Was that the same day or was that like later?
Same, literally that same conversation when she told me, can we just be friends? And then I changed, I made like, I just said those things to her and it changed her mind. And she was like, okay, let's go on a date tomorrow. And we're like, okay, just
Okay.
like that.
Okay. Well, I mean, if it was literally just a conversation like that, to me, it just sounds like, okay, well, I guess so much for the guy she saw at the concert and so much for wanting to just potentially stay friends. To me, it just sounds like she was willing to take a shot.
Yeah. And I know like there's going to be probably a handful of people like saying no means no kind of deal, but it's like she definitely was shutting down, potential buildup there, So I was like, what do we got to lose? Let's see where this goes, And then I think one of the things too, when we went on the next date, like I guess you could say it was the first official date, because we actually both came to the consensus that it was a date. We spent the whole day together. And during that date, she told me, I was like, so I stopped communication with the other guy because I really want to focus and see where this goes with you. And when she said
Wow.
that to me, like, that was very validating to me for like somebody who, with anxious attachments, we have low self-esteem and getting that validation of like, you picked me. And I'm just like, I was, livid hearing some kind of validation, from her saying that to me. And like that really meant a lot to me, like, that I was chosen. And so everything seemed kosher from that point on. We definitely had some hiccups. Like I felt like every time we brought up, since the whole core thing about this was, politics, there was definitely like communication of like I would explain my version, like my side of some kind of views, but then she would just kind of nonchalantly say like, I don't agree with your perspective, but I can see your perspective. But she wouldn't like emphasize what her perspective was. It was kind of like she was trying her best to dodge any kind of, argument or tension between us. And like, I really didn't get the full grasp of like how she stood on a lot of things because I guess she was trying her best to be in like a people pleasing kind of mood, but that's me just kind of, psychoanalyzing her after the fact. But anyway, we definitely rallied up the relationship from that point on. And we definitely like the intimacy was definitely getting more heated as time went on. For full disclosure, the whole time I dated her we never had sex because like I went at her pace. I was very consentful every time I was with her, and if she was okay with it I would go for it, but I to me was like, I don't want to put her in a position where she feels uncomfortable. And I was very consensual every single time we got together. And of course, like we definitely riled up the intimacy every time to the point where it was pretty much we were on third base by the end of the relationship. But yeah, I was in no rush with this because like in all honesty, I was like telling myself like this is a really good green flag that I look for in a partner. And at that point I was kind of coming to the decision of like, you know what? I don't care how long it takes. Like I feel like this one's worth it and I'll take my time with it, because I saw a lot of good qualities in this woman. And at that point, my mind was made up, and I'm like, if this is the woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, I'm okay with that. And so, the first, I want to say, major hiccup of the relationship was that it kind of happened after like one peak of the relationship. Like, I stayed the night at her place, and then like after I left, the next day she started her first day at the university, and she caught COVID. So she had to isolate herself for a whole week.
Oof.
And yeah, so that was kind of like self-isolating for a while. And then I kind of kept the communication going by text message. We even did a couple video calls to keep the communication lines between us. And during that time, there was a concert I was going to. And originally, this concert was pre-planned way before I met Tifa. And so, like, I already had planned to go with a female friend of mine. We'll call her Jessie. And so me and Jesse were already planning to go to this concert. But then I told Jesse, I was like, hey, I kind of met this girl and I'm kind of like, might want to take her instead of you. And she's like, go for it. I don't care. Like, if you got a girlfriend, I'm happy for you. Take her. But then, like, she got the Rona. So it was back on the original plan. Me and Jesse are going to go. And Tifa was completely okay with that, because me and Jesse have been friends for years. And I've known Jesse for a very, very long time. And our relationship was pretty plutonic through the most part, like 110% plutonic. Like, no moves were made between both of us. Plus, she was in a marriage. She was married at the time. It was open marriage, but still, like, I didn't want to deal with any of that mess, but more power to her. That's not my, cup of tea. But that day, she definitely crossed the boundaries of our friendship, and it made me super uncomfortable. And I just straight up told, like, Jesse, I was like, listen, I really like this girl. I don't want to fuck this up. So please, like, and I crossed the line in the sand. I was like, don't. And she kept trying to push those boundaries. Like, she attempted multiple times to hold my hand, and she would try to, like, put her feet on top of my lap while we were sitting in the seats. And I just felt so dirty, because I was like shutting down every chance she tried to make. And I felt disgusted. And the next day I called Tifa and I was kind of like, listen, this is what happened. Um, I was just being transparent with you, and I'm just going to be honest. And this is what happened between me and her. And I didn't do anything, but she kept trying to make moves on me, and yeah, made it awkward. Um, so it's like, frankly, I don't care if I ever hang out with her again, because, like, I don't want awkward friendships like that to get in the way between us. And she felt really appreciative that I told her that. And so the next day, she calls me and asks me, so this might seem like a weird question, but you remember that guy in the indie band? It's like, yeah, what about him? And it's like, yeah, so he, like, reached out to me and asked if we can just be friends and have coffee sometimes. And I just want to know how you felt about that. And I'm like, yeah. Um, it didn't matter what I said, it was going to be the wrong answer. Granted, I knew what his intentions were,
Yeah.
because, like, a guy doesn't disappear off the map. Like, that was the thing. Like, this guy magically comes back into the picture a month later and just randomly asks, hey, can we be friends? Like,
No,
no,
that's way too convenient.
no, 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 no. So I kind of went down. I didn't want to come off like misogynistic, but I definitely know, like, I know a lot of guys and they have ulterior motives when talking to women. And I'm like, you know, you're a grown woman, you can do what you want. But just you gotta be careful with some of these guys. And I bet you anything, there's probably a lot of guys that, probably have feelings for you, like a lot of your guy friends. I bet, like, most of them, if you asked them, they would probably be like, yeah, I have feelings for you that they never told you. And, like, that's it's yeah, it was very awkward. Like, and the thing was, it was like this guy specifically, like, he likes you because you guys kind of established that early on, and then he just magically comes back into the picture and just wants to be friends. Like, no, I don't trust that. Yeah.
No, neither do I. I mean, to me, whilst there are things that I want to talk about from what you shared, and I'll get to them later, I think the thing that bothers me about this is a few things. One is the fact that, on one hand, yes, Tifa's allowed to do whatever she wants to do. Like, that's one thing.
Mm,
But I think that given the context of what had happened previously, where you'd said, hey, I'd gone to a concert with Jesse and this is what had happened between us, and Jesse had been really breaching boundaries, and it made me feel really uncomfortable because not only am I trying to, be monogamous in my attention to you, but it's also, I just felt really quite not okay with what occurred. And Tifa's listened to this, and then she's coming to you with oh, by the way, hey, remember that guy from the concert, and yeah, he's come back into the picture and he's interested in seeing me for coffee, as friends. I mean, to me, it feels like a bit of a betrayal because you've already said, I'm committed to wanting to connect with you. And she has basically said, yeah, I'm thinking of diverting some energy and attention to a guy who I initially brought up as someone I'm also spending time and energy with when we first connected. And she'd also
mm,
told you how she'd stopped communicating with him intentionally to focus her efforts on you. So you've had this moment of vulnerability with her about what's going on with Jesse and basically saying, look, I'm here for you and I just don't want to I don't want to go through an experience like that again because it felt awful. And what Jesse did was not okay. Like based on what you described, like I mean, that is very emotionally manipulative levels of stuff. Not to mention
Oh
just
yeah, because I know he does not want to be friends with her. I know his intentions. Like, if you showed interest in somebody, you don't just magically come out of the blue and just say, "Yeah, I'm okay with being friends." Like,
and let's make the
no.
coffee. No, like no, no, no. Like there's obviously unfinished business between the two of them. So 100%.
Mhm.
I mean, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to deduce the fact that it's like there's clearly, he was put on the back burner. There was no, to me, I think this goes back to the issue of boundaries, which is I don't think Tifa has them. And it also sounds to me like this is sort of leading into the realm of plausible deniability a bit. You've had this moment where you've been really vulnerable with Tifa, and then all of a sudden he just comes back in the picture like this. I mean, it may have been a coincidence that he did indeed reach back out around that time, in which case, wonderful. But I also just think it feels just a little bit more than just a case of convenience. If anything, it almost feels like as a way of trying to distance herself from the growing connection that you've got with her as well, too. Like, I mean, also, if she didn't want to continue it with you, or if she didn't feel comfortable with what you just disclosed about Jesse, she could have just, said to you, listen, I need to let you know, this didn't feel comfortable to hear, whatever it may have been. It doesn't sound like that was the issue at all. To me, it just sounds like, she conveniently had
Mhm.
a reason to sort of diminish the connection that she's been building with you during this time. So, yeah, bit of a betrayal, not cool
Oh,
behavior.
for
I can
sure,
imagine
for
I
sure.
wouldn't have felt good given everything she'd set up to this point, and also the disclosure you had about Jesse. So, yeah, not great so far.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was kind of like, I did the stereotypical. I asked her, I was like, where do we stand in this? And she kind of blatantly told me, it was like, well, I don't usually call somebody I'm laying in bed naked with my friend. And so I was like, okay, so we're officially a couple now, and man, I was bragging to everybody about it, because I was just like, man, like I was flabbergasted, because I was like, this is a woman that you don't meet too often, So I was like, yeah, I was giddy as a schoolboy, thinking that I was like, I met somebody like this. And then when she played that card, I was kind of like, do you is this conversation really happening? And like I said, like you were saying, it felt very hypocritical. Like I literally just got the back off the back of I was hanging out with a female friend of mine and she crossed some boundaries And I was uncomfortable with that. And now you're wanting to hang out and have coffee with somebody who clearly had interest in you. It just seemed like very hypocritical on my perspective of things.
I'd have to
So,
agree. I'd have to agree.
mhm.
Like, I mean, I think you've made it fairly clear that you don't want entanglements from third parties, and now she's bringing a third party into the fold. It's kind of like, what are you doing? Like, I mean, are we trying?
Yeah, yeah. Like I think at that point she's already trying to find ways to sabotage the
I
relationship.
would have to agree with you. I'd have to agree with you. And I find it's highly odd that she's saying, she's doing that to you whilst also, in a way, people pleasing by saying, well, I don't get with people, I don't have friends who I've been naked with. It's like, but to me, I don't know about you, Corey. I feel like there's an air of ambiguity that's still emerging. And I mean, it was sort of present on the first date about where she stood with things, with this guy
Mhm.
from the concert, with her dating off the back of the relationship. It feels like she's brought this air of ambiguity about things. And on one hand, she's given you a bone saying, hey, we're not just friends. But at the same time, there's this other dude in the picture as well, too.
Yeah, yeah. And I was really digging to see like this seemed like too good to be true. Like there has to be a catch, and all I could find was like green flags because, like, for one, she was very well educated. She graduated from Penn State with honors. uh, and her family dynamic, like both of her parents were still alive and together. And I just kind of like, I couldn't find anything that would seem like the stereotypical red flag situation that could cause problems in the dynamic of how she ended up the way she is. And like even her past relationship, she only was in two relationships, and one of them was her high school sweetheart that lasted for 5 years. And then another one was a guy she dated while in college, and that lasted for 7 years. So, like, her previous relationship dynamics of like, okay, only two boyfriends, and both of them were decently long term. So I'm like, I don't see anything wrong here. So I was like, yeah, I feel like this, let's keep going and see how it happens. And it's like, I don't know how this could go wrong, but little did I know, like, the worst is yet to come. And then, anyway, um, so after that, uh, she stayed pretty much isolated from COVID for a couple more days. And then she waited until I had a board game meetup that I was hosting. And so she came to my apartment, and we pretty much just like first time I've seen her in over a week. So we get caught up, and we're just laying in bed, and we're just like talking to each other. And like I was trying to be more vulnerable with it. Was like, more emphasizing on the dude she wanted to have coffee with. And then I was kind of like, listen, like, I don't care if you have guy friends, but you know, you you kind of just set me up for failure with asking him, because that one, is kind of understandable because like you did kind of have some kind of interest in him other than just friendship at one time. She
Right.
was like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry about that. And I'm like, okay, cool. We came to, a middle ground with that. And then, another cool validating thing that she kind of threw out to me was like, she just out of the blue just told me, I really love being your girlfriend and I missed you. And there's this point where I feel like a lot of times, for people with insecurities, they always like, I always question, like, I'm the one initiating these things. Like, they'll say it, but you have to say it too. And it's like this weird mind reading thing. Like, you want them to say it because you feel like they're only saying it because you say it to them first. And the fact that she said that out of the blue really, validated me, because I didn't do anything to initiate her saying those things. So she said them to me, and I was like, thank you. So we go to the meetup. Everything seems kosher. She comes back to drop me off here. And then she has the, hey, can we talk? And I was like, oh, no. So, and we have to talk. And she was like, I really like you. You're really charming. You're compassionate. You're thoughtful, open minded. and you make me feel in your I found out tonight you're really funny. Like you're really funny. And you make me feel safe. And no one has ever made me feel safe in my entire life. But I feel like our political views could potentially cause problems in the future. So I think it's for both of us, I think it's in our best interests to just cut things off now.
What the actual fuck?
Yeah. Okay. You want to put your 2 cents in at that point, or you want me to keep going?
Uh,
She emphasized more, and she was like, yeah, plus I feel like you're going to get really jealous with a lot of my guy friends. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's using this again.
What?
Yeah. And then she was like, plus I really like, we did bring up the thing of like, do you want to have kids? And we both were kind of in agreement of like, I don't know. I don't know if I could be a good father. And the same, she kind of said the same thing. Like, I don't know, we were both up in the air, but she still used that against me. Like, she literally just checklist everything that we kind of had problems with and just shoved them all in my face and told me that this ain't going to work.
Oh no. No, 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 no. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
No. No, no, no. Like, okay, whoa, no. Thank you for sharing all that with me. Oh, fucking hell. Okay, no.
Your reaction is priceless. And I'll just say that this was the reaction I was expecting from you. And yeah, go on.
Well, I'm glad it doesn't disappoint. Just what the actual fuck? Like, I mean, okay, so you've been told I love being your girlfriend, and then shortly after the fact, you're being given the whole,
This is the
hey,
same day. This all happened in the same
oh,
day.
of course it fucking did. And then you get the whole, then you get the hey, can we talk? You've never met, like, I've never felt so safe with anyone else before. You've made me feel so safe. Good on you, by the way. Like, that's that huge compliment. We'll take that. Like, that's a huge
Oh
compliment
yeah,
for you.
yeah.
So good on you. Yes, going back to something that you said earlier, I do think that perhaps, one thing I'd say is if you ever encounter a girl like this and she ever tells you in the future, hey, I've got partner B on the side who I'm seeing, and I don't want to take this any further than friends, I'd say leave it as red because that's absolutely, I wouldn't call it a strong boundary, but take it as a red as you don't want to be getting messy with that. But anyways, putting it to where we are right now, just okay. Like if we put all the compliments she gave you to one side, the whole like, oh, we have different political opinions, or not to mention she also told you that you're very open-minded. So we have different political views, and I think that's going to cause problems for us, which is why I think we should break up. She led with that, like from what I'm hearing. Like she led
Yeah.
with that, and then it was a case of, you may also get jealous with my guy friends. Um, what the actual fuck? Okay, so let's talk about political reasons to not be compatible. If you're saying, like, let's talk actual reasons as to why this would not work out.
Okay. Okay.
Like, okay, if you're someone who is hardcore left and hardcore right, that's when things become so intrinsically different because of identity reasons, and you're probably not going to see eye to eye. It's probably going to be a fucking shouting match, and you're probably going to hate each other. If you're someone who, it's a case of say, I'm moderate one way and I'm moderate the other, it's literally down to discrepancies of like, not human rights, but like, say, where do we put our pennies, in terms of tax and also budgeting, then
Hmm.
I'm like, I think you can kind of cross the gap with that. If it's a case of like, say, human rights, I think that's where people are going to be like, absolutely fuck no, we can't do this. But
Yeah.
what I don't like is the fact that it was such a premature thing of like, we have different political opinions, and I think that's going to be a problem for us. That's why I think we should break up. Not a conversation of like, hey, how do you feel about ABC related political issue? Something's just dropped this week. The government's done this. My state's done that.
Hmm.
Women's rights have gone through a lot of hell lately. This is how I'm experiencing things. It seems to me like it's a simple, just superficial cutoff on political values. But then the second thing she slaps you with is, oh, but I think you get jealous with my guy friends. Just like, no, like, sorry, where did that come from? Like thin air? Like, you had, and I think
Well,
this is,
not only
Sorry.
that, but the key word with the politics thing, she was like, our politics could potentially, key word there, potentially, like she could, like as of right now, things are fine, but she thinks that things could get worse. Like she's assuming that it could get worse.
This is such unilateral bullshit. And also, to your point, like, I mean, they could be different. I mean, I understand. Okay, look, I want to make it very clear. There is one thing that is different from, say, like, let me put it like this. When you've been around the bush, you can kind of detect certain things about people. You might be like, for example, communication styles. That's a big one.
Yeah.
You might be dating someone like, okay, let's just say you were dating Tifa in a future life and you dated a girl who was very similar to Tifa. You might
Mhm.
recognize that she's someone who's got another friend on the side who wants to see her for coffee. You might then say to her, hey, listen, I want to have a chat with you. I really like you, but I also notice that you tend to have a lot of, male friends in this sort of ambiguous position with where they're at. To me, I feel not so much threatened, but unsure as to whether I should continue to invest because if this occurs, it feels like I'm competing for space and energy, and it's actually giving me confusion as to where I stand
Yeah.
with this. That is a reasonable thing to say. You're not saying, oh, by the way, this could potentially be an issue and I'm going to break up with you. No, and frankly, that sounds like a much more legitimate reason to potentially break up with someone than over politics. Like, what about politics is this could potentially be an issue? So that's that. You look like
Well,
you
and
want to
that's
say
the
something, you
thing.
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think to emphasize the jealousy thing, because like that was a big trigger on my end because I've had past relationships where they had those conversations. I had those exact same conversations with her, and they would like that other guy, they ended up sleeping with him. So it's like when I heard that, I was like, oh no, being very defensive about it. But then she kind of gaslit me a little bit, saying it was like, hey, that's unfair to compare me to other people. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But you're really setting this up not in a good way right now, chick. And the politics thing, like, I never really thought that my political views were that malice, because like I kind of kept myself for the most part out of them, because it's at my core, like it doesn't really affect me, that much in the long run. I have certain beliefs, about certain, stances and things, but like I don't think that makes me a bad person, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect my value system. And I'm just like, where's this coming from? And then like I had the hardest struggle of like, is this a justifiable reason to break it off, or is there more to it? But everybody pretty much said that it kind of like, what, this is bullshit, and
Well, I think the reason it's bullshit to me is that nothing concrete has actually been delivered. And also, it's so jarring in the fact that you've just been complimented for being safe. She loves being your girlfriend. Like, I mean, like, this is not legitimate from the sounds of it at all. Like, this is like real 180 levels of shit. You've gone from being amazing to, but we could also have potential problems, so therefore I'm ending it. It's so premature. And also, to your point, I don't like the way that she's weaponizing potential jealousy against you as well, too. If you've had a history of, women having a third party be someone they cheat with, you have every reason to clock a pattern, a history. And, it's not to say that she's someone who is a cheater or she will cheat, but it's just to say that this is discernment in action. You pick up patterns from previous people. And it's not, I don't think what you're doing was hyper vigilant. I think you were just looking at this going, I recognize what's going on here. You're allowed to be a good, big girl, Tifa. If you want to see this guy who you hung out with, by all means, do that. But I'm just letting you know how it makes me feel about this. That's, I think, actually very reasonable given the circumstances. But
yeah.
I think the way that she's framed it is that it's almost as if to say, like, oh, you have these potential character flaws that could get in the way of this actually going any further without
Yeah.
actually. And I think that's not okay. Like, that's not okay to say that, especially after all the stuff she was saying before.
Yeah, and I've always been in the camp of like, I think a little jealousy in relationships is healthy because at least that shows that you care.
We might have differing opinions on that, but anyways, keep going.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, so she kind of left me high and dry after that. And like the whole time she's telling me this, she's holding my hands and she's shaking and she's having the hardest time to like convey this. And she was pretty much telling me like the whole time she was that she was quarantining herself. She had a whole week to herself and she was really torn about herself because I could hear when she was telling me this. I was like, I know what she's doing, but I know no matter what I say, I can't I can't stop it from happening.
Yeah.
Because she literally was like torn, trying to come up, like she was fighting herself, like within herself, like, should I do this? Should I stick it out? Like, but she was like, I felt like my gut is telling me that this is not a good idea. And I'm like, yeah, I've watched enough of your videos that those gut feelings aren't exactly the best thing to listen to. Um, yeah. So it didn't matter what I said. Her mind was made up, and I know I couldn't change her mind. And because that's the thing, like, it's not my place to do that. And I will say this, like, she reached out to me the next morning and texted me to see if I was okay, which I was like, I pretty much blew up and said, no, I'm not okay. And then I gave her some space. I didn't reach out to her until a week later, and then we had another talk. Uh, I was hoping for maybe an in-person conversation, but she wanted to keep the boundary of keeping a like video or phone call, and I was like, okay, understandable. And she definitely thought that like things could get a little heated, and so she tried to like keep her ground because she kept rambling on about like this is the best course for me. It's like this is the best choice for me. And then she tried to double down on the politics thing, because she really kind of said like, hey, politics, they're a very important part, and I feel like it's very important to me. And I feel like if I'm going to have a partner, I want that aspect to be very aligned, because when I have a partner, it's like I want 100%, be sure. And I was like, yes, here we go. We're setting ourselves up for failure for creating that Phantom X kind of bullcrap where they have to be perfect and they're not, and then that's a good reason to let them go, kind of deal.
Yeah.
And
But it's also that realm of plausible deniability because it's that thing of like, well, on one hand, yeah, political alignment I think is incredibly important for a lot of people. Look, I mean, I'm on the
mm,
stance of, particularly as I'm part of the minority group, I'm like, I'm going to be for the party that actually supports my rights, not the one that isn't, depending on where I'm at. But I think what I don't like about the way this is weaponized against you, Corey, is the fact that it's like, you know, this doesn't sound to me like it's a case, it's really about the politics. It sounds like it is, but it's actually not. It
yeah.
sounds to me like this is, even this whole conversation, like even her ringing you up the day after being like, oh, are you okay? I feel like what's happening is you're a participant in her brain. She's like invited you into her brain. She's having conversations with herself, not with you. Even if we look at the breakup day, it's this whole thing of like one side is saying, oh, I love being your girlfriend. Another side says, but we can't make this work. Another side is saying, oh, I'm worried about hurting Corey's feelings because it makes me look bad. Oh, but I need to double down on why it was the right decision to do this. It doesn't actually feel like you're engaging with her, like her core self. It just
Mm-hmm.
seems like you're engaging with like these multiple disparate parts that are each in conflict.
Oh yeah, 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 because it's like the old adage of like there's two wolves inside and the one who wins is the one you feed, kind of deal, and
Good adage, yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's what I felt like. The one who was fighting against the whole relate was kind of like the avoidance side of her was really flaring up. And
Oh yeah.
but that was the thing. I was like, huh. And here was the problem I kind of fell into because, I took full advantage of me having, free telehealth through the company I work for. So I have three therapists that I talk to, and two of them were on the ball of like, yeah, I feel like this whole thing is complete bullshit. There's more to it that she's not telling you. But one of them was on the fence of like, oh yeah, this is totally a justifiable reason to break up with somebody. And I'm like, woman, you don't understand, and I will say that I do no longer see that therapist because the conversations we had since then, it just kind of really snowballed to where I felt super uncomfortable every time after I got done talking to her. Like, I honestly told her straight up, I was like, I feel worse after talking to you than before. And she was like, well, that's never my intentions. And I apologize. But then, like, I went on this ramble where I was like, is it really justifiable? Is like, are politics really that important to somebody, you know? And then she went on to the rant of like saying, like, because I always thought that, like, I think when you make your political views and your values and when they intertwine too closely, that's where things get really dicey.
Yes, it can.
Because then at that, yeah, because at that point, your ideology becomes your identity. And then,
Yeah, keep going. But I was going to say, short answer is I completely agree with you.
yeah, and that's what my therapist said. And so she ran on with that. And of course, like, I went on with stuff of like, yeah, but it's like there's so much been going on, like the death of Charlie Kirk literally happened like a week after she broke it off with me. And so it was funny when I said it to the therapist, she was kind of like, I don't want to talk about Charlie Kirk. And I'm like, of course you don't. But I'm like, it was weird for a therapist to say that, because I was like, well, okay. I
But you want to
mean,
talk about it?
yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought that was really weird. It's like, oh, she is triggered by him. Like she treated him like Voldemort, like don't dare speak his name. I'm like, okay, sorry. And
What I would
then
what I'd say, just to jump in really quickly, is to say that look, I know a lot of people. I didn't know Charlie Kirk from a slice of toast, and I've heard multiple accounts on different sides. But what I would say is that from a therapeutic perspective, my I think what I would say is it's okay to be boundaried around certain things as a clinician to say, listen, this is outside of my scope, or it's going to affect our working relationship. Totally fine to say that because that's a boundary comment.
yeah,
But I think that, what I'm hearing is a rapport issue between you and this therapist in the sense that it sounds to me like you weren't really aligned in terms of what was being said. Because on one hand, I think if her concerns are, the woman has the right to say whatever she wants and political values are really important. On one hand, I'd say on the surface, yes, they are absolutely important things. I think that having an understanding of politics and having people aligned with that, in theory, are very important. Supporting, female emancipation and rights, absolutely important. And
mm-hmm.
there's a surface layer underneath that as well, too, which is that if we're riding and dying on my partner, who happens to be a woman who chose to break up with me early on because of politics, then on the surface it's like seems reasonable. But when we look at the actuality of what occurred in your dynamic, Corey, with her,
Mm-hmm.
this was not a simple case of like, oh, it was a real incompatibility case of politics, or it was a case of like, the woman in this context just changed her mind. And it was just, a case of like, oh, flippant. No, because serious harm occurred for you psychologically, mentally, and emotionally. And I
Yeah,
mean, and I think why this is significant too is, you know, um, it's one thing, I think, to look at a lot of these cases and have a bias and say, well, the woman's in the right and she has choice. And in theory, yes, she does. But it doesn't matter what, I think this is the really key thing is, but where is that choice coming from and how is that impacting the other person?
mm-hmm.
Because I think when you say and do certain things that have a detrimental impact on another person's well-being and you're continuing to behave that way, you are relationally harmful. So
Yeah,
in that context, that's where I'm like, no, this goes beyond just the surface level stuff of what we're talking about.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And pretty much after that point, I stopped seeing her, and I was kind of like, this seems too weird, and it's like this is not being very helpful to me healing through this. And I think the dangerous thing that the walk on that is like, if I only had her as my therapist, and it would be very hard to grasp that reality of like, well, this woman broke up with me over politics, and I go talk to my said therapist about this, and she validates her reason to do that. it kind of puts me in this bubble. I'm like, yeah, I guess it was the politics were the problem, instead of like, no, I think there's something more here. But when you seem like you're the odd man out, and all people, it's a dangerous road to go down if I didn't have other, like, luckily I had other therapists to validate me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is also a case where too, and I want to make this clear to people listening in on this, is the fact that it's like, look, on one hand, people seeking validation, there are all kinds of people who seek validation, and some people should actually seek truth rather than validation. But I think in this context, it's not just a matter of validation. I think it's also discernment as well too, because I think this isn't so much of a case of, boy was broken up with because misaligned politic values with girl. I think there is a deeper layer to this. And I mean, just like in any industry, certain things can look a certain way, but when you get into it, you're like, whoa, hold on a second. There's actually something else that's going on here that you need to know about. And
Yeah.
and if anything is true in human dating and relationships, they're rarely simple. They're usually quite complicated. And I think that I will say this, I work with a lot of male clients who are straight, and what I have, and I mean, look, categorically speaking, a lot of them are not predatory, harmful human beings. In fact, they're lovely. And
Mm.
they are often put into some very dodgy situations because of partners' behavior like this, where they are made out to be, the problem, or they have like
Yeah.
in your context, is misaligned values related to politics. And I think in a day and look, even though, I am not denying the harm done to women, like I am very well aware of how bad that is. Like that's atrocious.
Yeah.
But I think there is a ripple effect that's also occurring too, that a lot of men in these kinds of dynamics are also being harmed, where excuses are made like, oh, you're jealous, you're needy, you're this or you're that when you're not, as a way to, dodge any self-accountability for what's going on. And so that's where I think, I am not about to say one trumps the other or this or that. It's just to say, I do think your example, can speak to a case of we can't just stop at a surface level analysis. We need to actually consider what's going on here with a bit more discernment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I think like a lot of times where we're looking at surface level problems, we need to search for the cause, not the symptom, so to speak, as they like to say. But I know when we carried out, I stopped talking to her, and then at the end of the that phone call with Tifa, she definitely offered the olive branch of friendship, and I was like, oh God, but and she tried to make it very clear that she was not humoring the idea of ever dating again, but I was like, you know what, like I'll humor the friendship thing, and that's only surface level bullcrap because like I knew the moment like I agreed to those terms, it was like I'm never going to see this woman again. I know how it is, and she even says like, let's do coffee one day. I'm like, yeah, sure, that'll never happen. And so I knew it was all surface level because it's one of those things of not making yourself look like the villain in the story of like, see, we're friends, everything's cool, fine. Even though I was like, hey, I got my meetup coming this week. Can you make it? But she had like an excuse for every time I wanted to reach out and connect with her. Even stuff where I was like, hey, there's something going on at the end of next month. You want to do that? And she's like, no, I think my dad's coming to visit that weekend. And I'm like, okay, I see what's going on here. Good luck, soldier. And I pretty much just stopped talking to her out for months. I want to say I kept on the no contact because there was no point. She, kind of stood her ground of where she stood on it, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I know what this is, and it's not worth the time. And then during this time I found the therapeutic way of trying to process all this because it wasn't helping my mental stress was on an all-time high. It was affecting my work, it was affecting my friendships, and my friends could see it. Like I started taking antidepressants for the first time in my life because
Oh,
of this, and I was like, it was rattling me like beyond anything else I've been through. I'm like, this woman like, what is it about this scenario that is riling me so hard? Like I was in a relationship with a woman for 10 years and I didn't get affected by nearly something by the extent of this woman, you know, that I've only dated for like a month at this point. Like just a small little facet has like wrecked me beyond belief. And I don't know, maybe it was the way she ended it. Maybe it was just like the fact that I saw so much validation through her. But the thing is, it was like, it really riled me. And listening to your videos and, on Spotify and then watching the YouTube videos too, was like, especially hearing the stories from like, Jillian and Amy and all of them, like really listening to like Jillian's video really kind of inspired me to be like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll reach out to her and see what happens. And I did the unthinkable. I texted her on Christmas. um, and she replied. Like she replied, and it was fairly at a reasonable time frame. And I wished her Merry Christmas. And then she was like, "How things been?" And like, "Oh, not great." And she's like, "Oh, is there?" And I was like, "Oh, don't worry about me. Like, just enjoy your time with your family." And then like a week later, I really contemplated. I was like, you know what? I just texted her and was like, "Can we talk?" And this is when like the final nail in the coffin of the relationship happened. And so I asked her, I was like, "What time's good for you?" And she was like, I don't care. I'm pretty free on Saturday. And then, there was a weird thing about like, what time is good for you? And I was like, "I don't care. Whatever works for you." It's like, "Please give me a time so I can put it on my calendar." And I was like, just a personal experience, but I feel like when people have to like fill that void where they have to put something on a calendar, I get the feeling like that's an avoidant tactic of like keeping yourself so busy to where you have to have situations on calendars, like I don't know. That's just the personal experiences I've picked up on women I've crossed paths with. They're definitely avoidant where they have like set things where they're hanging out and doing so many things at so many given times where they have to have a calendar to keep track of everything. I'm like, but anyway, we said 11, and sure enough, right on the dot, she calls me at 11 o'clock. And I just get straight to the point. Like, I just opened up to her. I was like, "Listen, it's been months since I spoke to you, but like, I am not okay. Like, I have felt like shit. I am losing interest. Like all the stuff that I enjoyed doing, I can't do it anymore. Like I can't go to the board game meetups anymore. And the few times that I go, I am so full of anxiety. And all I'm doing is looking at my watch, just wanting to go home. Like I can't find enjoyment in anything anymore." And it's like I was speaking to a customer service rep. She was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. What can I do to help you?" And I was like, "I really don't think there's anything you can do. It's like the damage has been done, and I was kind of like, none of it made sense, because like, how can you tell me that I make you feel safe, but yet like my political views are, the deal breaker? But it's like, if I make you feel safe, then all that other stuff is irrelevant, right?" And she's like, "Well, I don't think what I think is safe is what you think is what safe means." And I'm
What?
like, "Huh?" And I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, and then I just straight up said, I was like, "Listen, like, I don't care what you think, but I do feel like there you breaking up with me for politics is bullshit." And I was like, "Even if our political views lined up, I felt like you would have found something else to break it off with me." And she was like, "Oh, yeah,
100%.
yeah." And she answered with, "Oh, yeah, there was plenty of things I didn't like about you." And I'm like, "Oh, God." I was like, that hurts. Like, ouch, where did that come from? And then, like, it was just like so much vitriol, like it really felt like this is not the woman that I fell for. This is something completely different. Like her defense walls were on all-time high, and she went on with that. And then, like, you know, I just asked the questions like, why are politics so important to you? And then it was almost like weird because, like, at that point, she would say stuff like, oh, because I feel like my values correlate very much to my political views. And I'm like, oh no, I'm having the exact same conversation that I had with my therapist, like the exact same thing. And then I even went on, I was like, I know Paul, politics have been really crazy right now, like Charlie Kirk died, and then all the crazy shit that's going on, in Minneapolis. And she was like, yeah, I know it's like, it's crazy with the Minneapolis stuff. And I do want to talk about Charlie Kirk. And I was like, of course you don't. And I'm like, why? But it was weird. Like, it was almost like one to one, the exact same conversation I had with my therapist. And it was so weird and so surreal. Like, I've had this conversation before. And like,
Yeah.
she didn't back down on the whole value system. And then, like, when you do that, I was like, so my values are shit, because what? Like, that's when you fall into the category of like ideology creates your identity. That's where I think things just get lost, because you're so attached to that, you have nowhere to go once you lose it. But then, like, I was just being straight up with her. I was like, listen, I honestly, the whole time I was with you, I felt like you were out of my league. And I kind of thought that was way too good to be true. And then sure enough, here we are, and I was having struggles, like just being very open with her about that kind of stuff. And she was um, like, I don't find women like you often. And like, I'm just going to be searching for you and every woman I meet from this point onwards. Like, you're like one in a million. And she was just so cold the whole time. I was being so vulnerable with her, and it hurt so much. And then it was like really weird flip switch. It was like, what can I do to help you? And like, and I kind of, I regret wording it the way I did because when I said it, I was like, oh no, she took it the wrong way. But when I said, I was like, you know what? Just keep doing you. Just keep pretending like I don't exist. Like, just keep minding your business and going on with your life. Because, like, whatever happens to me, like, don't blame yourself for it. And I was like, oh no, because I was like, I should have worded it differently, but she took it completely wrong when I said that. And then she was like, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, what did you think I meant by that? I was like, no, I don't mean that. But like, don't worry about me. Whatever happens to me, just like, don't blame yourself for it. And I understood, like, shit, I came off, I could have worded that better, and I regret, like, I came off that way, meaning like I wanted to do that. But no, that was far beyond the case. I felt like shit, but not like that. Um, and she was like, are you going to talk to your therapist very soon? And I'm like, nah, yeah, I have an appointment with them at the end of the week. And it was like, promise me you'll talk about this with them. And I was like, okay. And it was like, promise me. And she got like really mad. And it's like, I take mental health very seriously. If you don't talk to your therapist about this, I'm going to step in and do something about this. And I was like, okay, so like, you take mental health like very seriously. So everything that I was talking to you up like for the past 30 minutes on this phone call. But then when you cross the line, like, now my mental health matters, it's like everything I was saying to you before wasn't, you know, structurally, because I was pretty much being very open with her to
Yeah.
the, yeah. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is ratchet, and I pretty much told her, I was like, listen, right now, like you were a shitty partner and you're being a shitty friend right now. And she was like, well, I think it's best that we don't even be friends right now. I was like, couldn't agree with you more. And then we said our goodbyes, hung up, and then I blocked her on all social media right afterwards because I was like, this. I went through so many stages of grief, and during that phone call, I went straight into the stage of anger. Like it was full on, like I'm mad at this woman now, the way she was like talking down to me like that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I have a lot to say on this. Firstly, I can definitely understand how you feel off the back of that experience. I think what's really interesting is that she doesn't seem to have capacity at all to hear what you've shared with her in any stretch of the imagination. Like, you talk about it, you're like, oh, okay, what is it about politics? And I mean, your question isn't literally, what about politics? It's more about what is it about me and your definition of political misalignment that's really the issue here.
Yeah.
And I think if she'd been, and look, this is something where if she'd been really explicit, like I said earlier, this could have all been avoided. But, instead, it was just this vague thing, which wasn't really a thing. And ouch, when she said to you, oh, yeah, I had plenty of things I don't like about you. Yuck. I mean, lest we
Yeah.
forget that the same day she broke up with you, she was saying, I love being your girlfriend. Now, to me, it almost feels like she's rewriting history in her head, even as she's talking to you
Yeah.
now. It feels like her flaw finding is on steroids, and she's just, coming up with reasons as to why it couldn't work. And when you're bearing your heart saying, look, I'm going to be looking at, whenever I'm dating, I'm going to be, looking for you in all the girls I date. And it's going to take me a while, before I find the next girl. Maybe I'm paraphrasing from my own experience because I feel like I said my own version of those words to someone else.
Mhm.
But anyways, that's neither here nor there. You're laying your heart out, and she's not really holding space for this. It sounds like, as you said, she's a customer service rep. I mean, I call it the robot experience. Um, and then when you bring up that, I understand how she heard it. Like, it sounds like you're about to say something quite fatal about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she obviously didn't take it well. To me, her reaction to that and saying, I take mental health seriously, what I find fascinating about that is it doesn't actually sound like she cares about you. It sounds more like she cares about her reputation and also her involvement with you. Like to me, if she took your mental health seriously, she would have at least, okay, let's look at it like this. Did she have to take this call? No. If she wanted to have a boundary around it, she could have just simply said, listen, I respect you're hurting. I just don't have capacity to have a conversation about this. Be on your merry way.
Hmm.
If she was to do the fair thing to offer some dignity about it, she could have just said, listen, Corey, I did in fact have strong feelings for you. I meant everything I said to you on the day. I got freaked out. When I heard some of the things that you mentioned to me, I automatically started fearing about where things could potentially go. I let my head run away with me, and I didn't have the opportunity to actually talk to you and say to you directly, here are my fears. Can you just tell me about what you make of this and where you stand with this? Instead, I let my fears run the show and I decided to end things prematurely without involving you. And I can see that's really hurt you, and I'm sorry. That
Hmm.
didn't happen. Instead, it turns into, almost like a deja vu experience with the therapist. And I mean, it's interesting that you clock that, that therapist of yours, that it was quite similar. It makes me think, I wonder if there was actually a very similar, nervous system for your therapist and also for Tifa in the sense that there might have actually been some striking similarities that were there between both people as well too. Because I mean, if you think about,
Yeah.
the commentary your therapist gave you, it seems like she was only cutting a thin slice of the pie. Like she could only see like a portion of what was going on.
Hmm.
Whereas I think you were looking for someone who could meet you at the depth and be like, no, I'm seeing what's going on, and it's not as simple as just what Teeth is making out it to be. So yeah, it's fascinating what you just shared there. But no, I'm sorry that you've gone through this because even though I'm sure this was the encounter that was the nail in the coffin, the final nail in the coffin, I gotta tell
Hmm.
you, sometimes you need to have those conversations with your exes in order to finally get there. I mean, it doesn't work for everyone,
Yeah.
but I will say
Yeah.
it really shows you, I think, more about the person and makes you realize, oh, it's not what I thought it was. This is actually
Hmm.
this is someone who fundamentally is, I've had experiences with people like Tifa before, and I will tell you the excuses they give you sound plausible in the moment, but when you really dig it apart, it just falls apart very quickly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like, there was a part of me that was really hoping that maybe there was enough time that passed between us not talking to us. Like, maybe she's calmed
Uh,
down a bit, like maybe she can be like, I was scared too, or something like that. Just be
no.
a little bit, I'm being vulnerable. Can you be vulnerable?
Nice
No.
try.
Like,
No, that
no, it
time.
doesn't work that way. Yeah.
No, you
And
you you say time. My brain is like, are you thinking in months? Because I'm thinking in years. I'm thinking in
yeah,
decades.
yeah. And it sucks because like she seems like such a wonderful woman that there was so many green flags to look at. And it's just like where, and I felt like, after that last phone call, it was like, man, I just wanted to give her a hug and like, I don't know who hurt you, but like, I'm sorry, because like the thing is when you look at those dynamics, you can kind of just like maybe come to the conclusion that they might have like an insecure attachment when you look at the family dynamic, like, oh, they're a child of divorce or some stuff like that, and they have parents that have separated or one of them's died, single parent situations, or they remarried and had step parents into the picture. But this one seemed pretty kosher, which kind of begs the question, like, what is going on here? Which to me fascinates me even more. It's like that's a scarier dynamic of like what was going behind those closed doors if everything was, yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny because a lot of families that have, as you described, the closed doors where they're all together, maybe holding on with lick and spit in the sense that, you know,
yeah,
often those family dynamics can have features of enmeshment, codependency, narcissism. It all looks good, but that's the point because
mm-hmm.
it runs on myth. It doesn't run on, truth and, on integrity. So no, what you're describing, what, are typical, I think, I suppose, how do I put this? To me, divorce, single parent families, yeah, there's trauma in that, but it doesn't always predict the outcome for the children at all.
Yeah,
Like, I'd
mm-hmm.
say to me, that's just like a feature, and I'm like, oh yeah, that'd suck to have gone through that, or that would have hurt. But it doesn't usually tell us what the integrity of the person is like. It doesn't tell us like what a child's, I guess, sense of self will be like. We can kind of guess and go, it's probably not going to be great, or it could be, because sometimes, hey, thanks to the trauma, people can go the other way as well too. But
Yeah,
yeah, I'd say whilst those traditional factors don't help, they don't always reliably go 1 + 2 = 3. So
mm-hmm.
yeah, it really does depend on a bunch of factors. But yeah, just rounding out again, I'm sorry you've gone through this, Corey. Like this is pretty horrific, but thank you for sharing this because I always wanted actually to get a guy to talk about this stuff and,
Yeah,
his experience with this. No, to me, it doesn't sound like Tifa had simply just a case of, a serious alignment conversation with you, not based on what she was saying and how she was saying it. And the reason I say this is not
yeah,
because I like to just prescribe avoidant attachment to everyone who disagrees with you. It's because the language and the way it's done, the patterns are usually there. And I just think, no, this tracks.